A long time ago, in the ancient land of Egypt, a mighty empire ruled by pharaohs who considered themselves gods on earth, there lived a people known as the Hebrews or the Israelites. They were descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, who had come to Egypt during a time of famine and found refuge there. But over the centuries, their numbers grew, and the pharaohs began to fear them as a threat. In the book of Exodus, chapter 1, verse 8, we read, "Then a new king to whom Joseph meant nothing came to power in Egypt. This Pharaoh, whose heart was hardened by fear and pride, enslaved the Israelites, forcing them to build great cities like Pithom and Ramesses with back-breaking labor. People cried out under the weight of their oppression, building storehouses and monuments that glorified the Pharaoh while their own lives were filled with suffering and despair. It was during this dark time of bondage that the story of Moses begins, a man who would become the greatest prophet in Israelite history, the deliverer of his people and the receiver of the Torah, God's divine law that would guide humanity for generations. Moses' birth was shrouded in danger and divine providence. The Pharaoh, terrified that the Israelites might one day rise against him, issued a cruel decree. Every newborn Hebrew boy was to be thrown into the Nile River to drown. In Exodus 1 verse 22 it is written, "Then Pharaoh gave this order to all his people, every Hebrew boy that is born ye must throw into the Nile, but let every girl live." The river, a source of life for Egypt, became a symbol of death for the oppressed. But God had a plan. In a humble Hebrew home, a woman named Jochebed gave birth to a son. She was from the tribe of Levi, and her husband was Amram. Seeing that the child was special, healthy, and beautiful, she hid him for 3 months, defying the Pharaoh's edict. When she could hide him no longer, she crafted a basket from papyrus reeds, coated it with pitch to make it waterproof, and placed the baby inside. With a heavy heart, she set the basket among the reeds along the bank of the Nile, entrusting her son to the waters that were meant to claim him. Her daughter, Miriam, stood at a distance to watch over the basket, her young eyes filled with worry and hope. Miraculously, the basket floated to where Pharaoh's daughter was bathing with her attendants. In Exodus 2 verses 5 to 6 we read, "Then Pharaoh's daughter went down to the Nile to bathe, and her attendants were walking along the riverbank. She saw the basket among the reeds and sent her female slave to get it. She opened it and saw the baby. He was crying and she felt sorry for him. 'This is one of the Hebrew babies,' she said. Moved by compassion, the princess decided to adopt the child, naming him Moses, which means drawn out, because she drew him out of the water. Little did she know that this act of kindness would set in motion events that would shake the foundations of her father's empire. Moses grew up in the opulence of Pharaoh's palace, educated in the ways of the Egyptians, their wisdom, their sciences, and their arts. He learned to read hieroglyphs, study the stars, and command with authority. Yet deep in his heart he knew he was different. Raised by his own mother, Jochebed, who was hired as his nursemaid through Miriam's clever intervention, Moses was taught the stories of his ancestors, Abraham's covenant with God, Isaac's faithfulness, and Jacob's 12 sons who became the tribes of Israel. He heard whispers of a God who promised to deliver his people from bondage, a God unlike the idols of Egypt. As Moses matured into a young man, he witnessed the brutal treatment of his fellow Hebrews. The taskmasters whipped them mercilessly, forcing them to make bricks without straw, their cries echoing through the dusty fields. One day, the injustice became too much to bear. In Exodus 2 verses 11 to 12, one day after Moses had grown up, he went out to where his own people were and watched them at their hard labor. He saw an Egyptian beating a Hebrew, one of his own people. Looking this way and that and seeing no one, he killed the Egyptian and hid him in the sand. In a moment of righteous anger, Moses struck down the oppressor, burying the body in the sand. But his secret did not stay hidden. The next day, when he tried to intervene in a fight between two Hebrews, one of them challenged him, "Who made you ruler and judge over us? Are you thinking of killing me as you killed the Egyptian?" Exodus 2 verse 14. Fearing for his life, as word reached Pharaoh, Moses fled Egypt. He journeyed to the land of Midian, a desert region far from the Nile's fertile banks. Exhausted and thirsty, he sat by a well where he encountered the 7 daughters of Reuel, also called Jethro, a priest of Midian. When shepherds tried to drive the women away, Moses defended them, watering their flocks. Impressed by his kindness and strength, Jethro invited Moses to his home. There, Moses married Zipporah, one of Jethro's daughters, and began a new life as a shepherd. In Exodus 2 verses 21 to 22, Moses agreed to stay with the man who gave his daughter Zipporah to Moses in marriage. Zipporah gave birth to a son, and Moses named him Gershom, saying, "I have become a foreigner in a foreign land." For 40 years Moses lived in Midian, tending sheep in the wilderness. The once princely figure, raised in luxury, now wandered the arid hills, learning humility, patience, and the ways of the desert. It was a time of preparation, though he did not yet know it. God was shaping him, stripping away his impulsiveness and forging a leader who would rely not on his own strength but on divine power. The Israelites continued to groan under slavery, their cries rising to heaven. In Exodus 2 verses 23 to 25, during that long period the king of Egypt died. The Israelites groaned in their slavery and cried out, and their cry for help because of their slavery went up to God. God heard their groaning, and he remembered his covenant with Abraham, with Isaac, and with Jacob. So God looked on the Israelites and was concerned about them. One ordinary day turned extraordinary when Moses led his flock to the far side of the wilderness, to Horeb, the mountain of God. There, he saw a bush engulfed in flames but not consumed by the fire. Curious, he approached. From the burning bush, God called out, "Moses! Moses!" Exodus 3 verse 4. Trembling, Moses replied, "Here I am." God revealed himself. "I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob." Exodus 3 verse 6. Hiding his face in fear, Moses listened as God spoke of the Israelites' suffering. "I have indeed seen the misery of my people in Egypt. I have heard them crying out because of their slave drivers, and I am concerned about their suffering. So I have come down to rescue them from the hand of the Egyptians and to bring them up out of that land into a good and spacious land, a land flowing with milk and honey." Exodus 3 verses 7 to 8. But God had a mission for Moses, "So now go. I am sending you to Pharaoh to bring my people the Israelites out of Egypt." Exodus 3 verse 10. Moses, humbled by years in exile, protested, "Who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and bring the Israelites out of Egypt?" Exodus 3 verse 11. God reassured him, "I will be with you." Exodus 3 verse 12. Still doubtful, Moses asked for God's name. The divine response echoed through eternity, "I am who I am. This is what you are to say to the Israelites. I am has sent me to you." Exodus 3 verse 14. This name, Yahweh, revealed God's eternal, self-existent nature, the one who is, was, and will be. Moses returned to Egypt, his heart heavy with the weight of God's command. The once familiar land, with its towering pyramids and bustling Nile, now felt like a battlefield where he would face the might of Pharaoh, a ruler who saw himself as divine. In Exodus 4 verse 21, God warned Moses, "When you return to Egypt, see that you perform before Pharaoh all the wonders I have given you the power to do. But I will harden his heart so that he will not let the people go." This divine foretelling set the stage for a dramatic clash, not just between a man and a king, but between the one true God and the false gods of Egypt. Moses, now 80 years old, was no longer the impulsive prince but a humble shepherd, leaning on God's promise and the staff in his hand. Upon arriving, Moses reunited with his brother Aaron, whom God had chosen to be his voice. Together they approached the Israelite elders, sharing the signs God had given Moses, the staff turning into a snake, the leprous hand healed, and the promise of water turning to blood. In Exodus 4 verses 30 to 31, Aaron told them everything the Lord had said to Moses. He also performed the signs before the people, and they believed. And when they heard that the Lord was concerned about them and had seen their misery, they bowed down and worshipped. The Israelites, crushed by slavery, found a spark of hope. Their cries had reached heaven, and God had sent a deliverer. Moses and Aaron then went to Pharaoh's court, standing before the throne of the most powerful man in the ancient world. In Exodus 5 verse 1 they boldly declared, "This is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says, Let my people go so that they may hold a festival to me in the wilderness." But Pharaoh scoffed, "Who is the Lord that I should obey him and let Israel go? I do not know the Lord, and I will not let Israel go." Exodus 5 verse 2. His arrogance reflected Egypt's pride, where gods like Ra and Osiris were worshipped, and Pharaoh himself was seen as a living deity. Instead of freeing the Israelites, he increased their burden, ordering them to make bricks without straw, a task both cruel and impossible. Taskmasters beat the Hebrew foremen, and the people's hope turned to despair. They turned on Moses, saying, "May the Lord look on you and judge you. You have made us obnoxious to Pharaoh and his officials and have put a sword in their hand to kill us." Exodus 5 verse 21. Moses, shaken, cried out to God, "Why, Lord, why have you brought trouble on this people? Is this why you sent me?" Exodus 5 verse 22. God reassured him, "Now you will see what I will do to Pharaoh. Because of my mighty hand he will let them go. Because of my mighty hand he will drive them out of his country." Exodus 6 verse 1. God reaffirmed his covenant with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, promising to bring the Israelites to the land sworn to their ancestors. Strengthened, Moses prepared for the battle ahead, knowing that God's power would prevail. To demonstrate his supremacy, God sent 10 plagues upon Egypt, each targeting the false gods and the pride of the nation. In Exodus 7:14 to 12:30, these plagues unfolded, escalating in severity, revealing God's judgment and mercy. The first plague struck the Nile, sacred to Egyptians as the source of life. Moses struck the river with his staff, and it turned to blood, killing fish and fouling the water. Exodus 7 verses 20 to 21. Yet Pharaoh's heart remained hard, his magicians mimicking the miracle with their tricks. The second plague brought frogs swarming from the Nile into homes, beds, and ovens. Exodus 8 verse 6. Pharaoh begged for relief, but when the frogs died, he refused to relent. The plagues continued. Gnats covered the land, defying Egypt's priests who could not replicate this sign. Exodus 8 verse 18. Flies swarmed, ruining the land, but spared Goshen, where the Israelites lived, showing God's protection. Exodus 8 verse 24. The fifth plague killed Egypt's livestock, a blow to their economy and worship of animal deities. Exodus 9 verse 6. Boils afflicted the Egyptians' bodies, humbling their pride. Exodus 9 verse 10. Hail destroyed crops, a direct challenge to the sky god Nut. Exodus 9 verse 25. Locusts devoured what remained, leaving Egypt barren. Exodus 10 verse 15. Darkness covered the land for 3 days, symbolizing the defeat of Ra, the sun god. Exodus 10 verse 22. Through each plague, God gave Pharaoh chances to repent, but his heart grew harder. The final plague was the most devastating. God instructed the Israelites to prepare for the Passover. Each household was to slaughter a lamb, smear its blood on their doorposts, and eat the meal in haste, ready to leave Egypt. In Exodus 12 verses 12 to 13, "On that same night I will pass through Egypt and strike down every firstborn of both people and animals, and I will bring judgment on all the gods of Egypt. I am the Lord. The blood will be a sign for you on the houses where you are, and when I see the blood I will pass over you." At midnight, the angel of death struck Egypt's firstborns, from Pharaoh's heir to the prisoner's child, but spared the Israelites' homes marked by blood. Exodus 12 verses 29 to 30. The cry of anguish rose across Egypt, and Pharaoh broke in, summoned Moses and Aaron. Up! Leave my people, you and the Israelites. Go worship the Lord as you have requested. Exodus 12 verse 31. Plagues were not just punishments but a divine demonstration that the God of Israel was sovereign over creation, unmatched by Egypt's idols. Each plague dismantled a piece of Egypt's worldview, proving that power, wealth, and false gods could not stand against Yahweh. For the Israelites, the Passover became a defining moment, a festival to remember God's deliverance, celebrated to this day with unleavened bread and bitter herbs, recalling their hurried escape and the bitterness of slavery. As Moses led the people out, they carried the wealth of Egypt, gold, silver, and clothing given by their neighbors, fulfilling God's promise in Exodus 12 verses 35 to 36. The Israelites did as Moses instructed and asked the Egyptians for articles of silver and gold and for clothing. The Lord had made the Egyptians favorably disposed toward the people, and they gave them what they asked for, so they plundered the Egyptians. This was no small exodus. Over 600,000 men plus women and children left Egypt, a multitude guided by God's presence in a pillar of cloud by day and fire by night. Exodus 13 verse 21. The Israelites, now free from Egypt's chains, stood at the edge of the Red Sea, their hearts pounding with both hope and fear. Pharaoh's change of heart had led to a relentless pursuit, his chariots and horsemen thundering toward them, determined to drag them back into slavery. In Exodus 14 verses 5 to 6 we read, "When the king of Egypt was told that the people had fled, Pharaoh and his officials changed their minds about them and said, 'What have we done? We have let the Israelites go and have lost their services.' So he had his chariot made ready and took his army with him. The Israelites, trapped between the sea and the approaching army, cried out in terror to Moses, 'Was it because there were no graves in Egypt that you brought us to the desert to die?' Exodus 14 verse 11. Moses, standing firm despite the chaos, answered with faith, 'Do not be afraid. Stand firm, and you will see the deliverance the Lord will bring you today. The Egyptians you see today you will never see again. The Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still.' Exodus 14 verses 13 to 14. Then, at God's command, Moses stretched out his staff over the sea. In one of the most awe-inspiring miracles of all time, the Lord drove the sea back with a strong east wind, parting the waters to create a dry path. In Exodus 14 verses 21 to 22, then Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and all that night the Lord drove the sea back with a strong east wind and turned it into dry land. The waters were divided, and the Israelites went through the sea on dry ground, with a wall of water on their right and on their left. Imagine the scene. Towering walls of water shimmering under the moonlight as a multitude, men, women, children, and livestock, passed through in awe and wonder. The Egyptians pursued, their chariots racing onto the dry seabed. But God intervened, throwing their ranks into confusion, clogging their chariot wheels. As the last Israelite reached safety, God instructed Moses to stretch out his hand again. The waters crashed back, engulfing Pharaoh's army. In Exodus 14 verses 27 to 28, Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and at daybreak the sea went back to its place. The Egyptians were fleeing toward it, and the Lord swept them into the sea. The water flowed back and covered the chariots and horsemen, the entire army of Pharaoh that had followed the Israelites into the sea. Not one of them survived. The sea, once a barrier, became God's instrument of deliverance, forever sealing the Israelites' freedom. People stood on the shore, their hearts overflowing with gratitude and awe. Miriam, Moses' sister, led the women in a song of triumph, recorded in Exodus 15 verses 1 to 2. "I will sing to the Lord, for he is highly exalted. Both horse and driver he has hurled into the sea. The Lord is my strength and my defense. He has become my salvation. This song, one of the oldest in the Torah, celebrated God's power and faithfulness, a moment etched into the memory of Israel as a testament to his might. Parting of the Red Sea was not just a physical escape but a spiritual turning point, proving that God was with his people, fulfilling his promise to Abraham's descendants. Yet freedom brought new challenges. The Israelites, now a wandering nation, entered the desert of Shur. Their joy soon turned to grumbling as they faced thirst and hunger. In Exodus 15 verse 24, they complained to Moses, "What are we to drink?" God led them to Marah, where the water was bitter, but he showed Moses a piece of wood to throw into the water, making it sweet. Exodus 15 verse 25. This miracle taught the people to rely on God's provision. Soon after, in the desert of Sin, they grumbled again. "If only we had died by the Lord's hand in Egypt. There we sat around pots of meat and ate all the food we wanted. But you have brought us out into this desert to starve this entire assembly to death." Exodus 16 verse 3. God responded with mercy, sending quail in the evening and manna, a flaky bread-like substance, each morning. In Exodus 16 verse 4, "Then the Lord said to Moses, I will rain down bread from heaven for you. The people are to go out each day and gather enough for that day." The manna, a daily gift, taught obedience and trust, as the people were to collect only what they needed, and it would spoil if hoarded. At Rephidim, another crisis arose: no water. People quarreled with Moses, nearly stoning him. God instructed Moses to strike a rock at Horeb with his staff, and water gushed forth. Exodus 17 verse 6. This miracle, like the others, showed God's care but also tested the people's faith. There, they also faced their first battle against the Amalekites. Moses stood on a hill, raising his hands in prayer with Aaron and her supporting him. As long as his hands were raised, Israel prevailed, securing victory. Exodus 17 verses 11 to 12. These early wilderness experiences were lessons in dependence on God, preparing the Israelites for the covenant they would soon receive. The journey led them to Mount Sinai, the same Horeb where Moses had seen the burning bush. Here, God would forge a covenant with his people, transforming them from a band of former slaves into a holy nation. In Exodus 19 verses 4 to 6, God spoke through Moses, "You yourselves have seen what I did to Egypt, and how I carried you on eagle's wings and brought you to myself. Now if you obey me fully and keep my covenant, then out of all nations you will be my treasured possession. Although the whole earth is mine, you will be for me a kingdom of priests and a holy nation." The people, awestruck, responded, "We will do everything the Lord has said." Exodus 19 verse 8. To prepare for this sacred moment, the people consecrated themselves, washing their clothes and abstaining from impurity. On the third day, Sinai was enveloped in thunder, lightning, and a thick cloud, with a trumpet blast growing louder. In Exodus 19 verses 16 to 19, "On the morning of the third day there was thunder and lightning, with a thick cloud over the mountain, and a very loud trumpet blast. Everyone in the camp trembled. Then Moses led the people out of the camp to meet with God, and they stood at the foot of the mountain. Mount Sinai was covered with smoke, because the Lord descended on it in fire. God's presence was overwhelming, a reminder of his holiness and power. Moses ascended the mountain, where God would give him the Torah, the divine law that would define Israel's relationship with him. Mount Sinai, the air crackled with divine energy as God prepared to reveal his Torah to the Israelites. This sacred mountain, once the site of Moses' burning bush encounter, now became the epicenter of a covenant that would bind God and his people forever. The Torah, meaning instruction or law, was not merely a set of rules but a blueprint for holy living encompassing moral, civil, and ceremonial guidelines. In Exodus 20 verses 1 to 2, God spoke directly, "And God spoke all these words, I am the Lord your God who brought you out of Egypt, out of the land of slavery." These opening words set the tone, reminding the people that their obedience stemmed from gratitude for deliverance, not fear. Core of the revelation was the Ten Commandments, inscribed by God's finger on 2 stone tablets. Delivered amid thunder and smoke, they formed the foundation of the Torah. The first commanded exclusive worship. You shall have no other gods before me, Exodus 20 verse 3, rejecting Egypt's polytheism. The second prohibited idols. You shall not make for yourself an image in the form of anything in heaven above or on the earth beneath or in the waters below, Exodus 20 verse 4. The third warned against misusing God's name. You shall not misuse the name of the Lord your God, Exodus 20 verse 7. The fourth mandated Sabbath rest. Remember the Sabbath day by keeping it holy, Exodus 20 verse 8, a day of renewal echoing God's creation rest. The remaining commandments focused on human relationships. Honor your father and your mother, Exodus 20 verse 12. You shall not murder, Exodus 20 verse 13. You shall not commit adultery, Exodus 20 verse 14. You shall not steal, Exodus 20 verse 15. You shall not give false testimony against your neighbor, Exodus 20 verse 16. And you shall not covet, Exodus 20 verse 17. These laws, simple yet profound, address the heart's intentions, promoting justice, fidelity, and contentment. The people, trembling at the mountain's base, responded in unison, "We will do everything the Lord has said. We will obey." Exodus 24 verse 7. Moses ascended Sinai multiple times, receiving detailed instructions over 40 days and nights. Beyond the Ten Commandments, God expanded the Torah with the Book of the Covenant, covering civil laws like restitution for theft, Exodus 22 verses 1 to 4, social justice for widows and orphans, Exodus 22 verses 22 to 24, and festivals like Passover, unleavened bread, and tabernacles, Exodus 23 verses 14 to 17. These laws emphasize compassion. Do not oppress a foreigner. You yourselves know how it feels to be foreigners, because you were foreigners in Egypt, Exodus 23 verse 9. God also outlined the tabernacle's design, a portable sanctuary symbolizing his presence among the people, with the Ark of the Covenant to house the tablets. Moses' role as mediator was crucial. He relayed God's words, interceded for the people, and even bargained with God. When the revelation's intensity overwhelmed the Israelites, they pleaded, "Speak to us yourself and we will listen. But do not have God speak to us or we will die." Exodus 20 verse 19. Moses assured them, "Do not be afraid. God has come to test you, so that the fear of God will be with you to keep you from sinning." Exodus 20 verse 20. His face glowed with divine radiance upon descending, veiling it to speak to the people, Exodus 34 verses 29 to 30, a sign of his unique intimacy with God. But while Moses communed on the mountain, trouble brewed below. The people, impatient after 40 days, turned to Aaron. "Come, make us gods who will go before us. As for this fellow Moses who brought us up out of Egypt, we don't know what has happened to him." Exodus 32 verse 1. Aaron, yielding to pressure, collected gold earrings and fashioned a golden calf, proclaiming, "These are your gods, Israel, who brought you up out of Egypt." Exodus 32 verse 4. People worshipped it with revelry, echoing Egypt's idolatry, a grave betrayal of the covenant they had just affirmed. God, seeing this, burned with anger. "I have seen these people, and they are a stiff-necked people. Now leave me alone so that my anger may burn against them and that I may destroy them. Then I will make you into a great nation." Exodus 32 verses 9 to 10. Moses interceded boldly. "Why should your anger burn against your people, whom you brought out of Egypt with great power and a mighty hand? Remember your servants Abraham, Isaac, and Israel." Exodus 32 verses 11 to 13. God relented, sparing the nation, but judgment followed. Moses descended, shattered the tablets in fury, ground the calf to powder, and scattered it in water for the people to drink. Exodus 32 verses 19 to 20. He rallied the Levites. "Whoever is for the Lord, come to me." Exodus 32 verse 26. They slew about 3,000 idolaters, earning their priestly role. The golden calf incident revealed the people's frailty and the need for grace alongside law. Moses pleaded for forgiveness, even offering himself. But now, please forgive their sin. But if not, then blot me out of the book you have written. Exodus 32 verse 32. God responded, whoever has sinned against me I will blot out of my book. Exodus 32 verse 33. Sending a plague but renewing the covenant. Moses ascended again, receiving new tablets. In Exodus 34 verses 6 to 7, God proclaimed his character. The Lord, the compassionate and gracious God, slow to anger, abounding in love and faithfulness, maintaining love to thousands and forgiving wickedness, rebellion and sin. Yet he does not leave the guilty unpunished. This renewal included God's glory passing before Moses, who hid in a rock cleft. Moses saw God's back, not his face, for no one may see me and live. Exodus 33 verse 20. Torah's giving emphasized relationship. God desired a people set apart, holy as he is holy. The laws on slavery, festivals, and justice fostered a society of equity, contrasting Egypt's oppression. Dietary laws, later detailed in Leviticus, and purity rites taught reverence for life and separation from pagan practices. The Sinai revelation transformed Moses. Once a fugitive, he now embodied the Torah, teaching it diligently. In Deuteronomy 4 verses 5 to 6, he later reflected, see, I have taught you decrees and laws as the Lord my God commanded me. Observe them carefully, for this will show your wisdom and understanding to the nations. Torah became Israel's constitution, guiding worship, ethics, and community. Yet the golden calf foreshadowed future struggles, idolatry, doubt, rebellion, that would test the covenant during the wilderness years. As the tabernacle was built according to God's blueprint, filled with the cloud of his presence, Exodus 40 verses 34 to 35, the Israelites prepared to journey onward. Moses, the man who parted the sea, had now brought down heaven's law, forging a nation under God. But the path to the promised land would be fraught with trials, teaching that true freedom comes not just from escape but from faithful obedience to the Torah's timeless wisdom. With the Torah received and the tabernacle erected, the Israelites departed Sinai, guided by the cloud of God's presence. This phase of their journey, detailed in Numbers and Deuteronomy, spanned 40 years, a time of testing, rebellion, and divine discipline. Moses, now the undisputed leader, faced the daunting task of shepherding a grumbling nation through the harsh wilderness toward the promised land. Torah's laws were fresh, but applying them amid scarcity and doubt proved challenging. In Numbers 9:15-17, the cloud directed their movements. Whenever the cloud lifted from above the tent, the Israelites set out. Wherever the cloud settled, the Israelites encamped. This nomadic life symbolized reliance on God, but human nature often rebelled. Early on, complaints resurfaced. In Numbers 11:4-6, the rabble among them craved Egypt's foods. If only we had meat to eat. We remember the fish we ate in Egypt at no cost, also the cucumbers, melons, leeks, onions, and garlic. But now we have lost our appetite. We never see anything but this manna. Moses, overwhelmed, cried to God, why have you brought this trouble on your servant? If this is how you are going to treat me, please go ahead and kill me. Numbers 11:11-15. God provided quail in abundance, but those who gorged faced a plague, a judgment on ingratitude. Numbers 11:31-34. He also appointed 70 elders to share Moses' burden, endowing them with the Spirit, causing them to prophesy. Numbers 11:25. Family tensions arose when Miriam and Aaron challenged Moses' authority. Has the Lord spoken only through Moses? Hasn't he also spoken through us? Numbers 12:2. Their jealousy stemmed from Moses' Cushite wife, but God rebuked them. With him I speak face to face, clearly and not in riddles. He sees the form of the Lord, Numbers 12:8. Miriam was struck with leprosy, but Moses interceded, "Please, God, heal her." Numbers 12:13. For 7 days outside camp, she was restored, highlighting Moses' humility and God's defense of his chosen prophet. Pivotal crisis came at Kadesh Barnea on Canaan's border. Moses sent 12 spies, one from each tribe, to scout the land. They returned with grapes so large 2 men carried a cluster, confirming the land's fertility. It does flow with milk and honey. Numbers 13:27. But 10 spies spread fear. The people who live there are powerful, and the cities are fortified and very large. We seemed like grasshoppers in our own eyes. Numbers 13:28-33. Only Joshua and Caleb urged faith. The land we passed through and explored is exceedingly good. Do not be afraid of the people of the land. Numbers 14:7-9. Panic ensued. The whole assembly talked about stoning them. Numbers 14:10. The people wailed, "If only we had died in Egypt, or in this wilderness." Numbers 14:2, proposing a return to bondage. God's glory appeared, and he threatened destruction. "How long will these people treat me with contempt?" Numbers 14:11. Moses interceded again, appealing to God's reputation and mercy. "In accordance with your great unfailing love, forgive the sin of these people." Numbers 14:19. God pardoned but decreed, "Not one of those who saw my glory and the signs I performed in Egypt and in the wilderness, but who disobeyed me, will ever see the land I promised on oath to their ancestors." Numbers 14:20-23. The 10 fearful spies died of plague, and the nation was sentenced to 40 years of wandering, 1 year for each scouting day. Joshua and Caleb were spared, destined to enter Canaan. When the people, regretting their unbelief, presumptuously attacked without God's blessing, they were defeated by Amalekites and Canaanites. Numbers 14:39-45. This spy incident epitomized the wilderness theme, faith versus fear. Moses' leadership was tested as he navigated these rebellions, enforcing Torah laws like Sabbath observance. A man gathering wood on the Sabbath was stoned at God's command. Numbers 15:32-36, reinforcing holiness. Korah's rebellion marked another low. Korah, a Levite with Dathan, Abiram, and 250 leaders, accused Moses and Aaron. "You have gone too far. The whole community is holy. Why then do you set yourselves above the Lord's assembly?" Numbers 16:3. This democratic uprising challenged God's appointed order. Moses fell face down. "In the morning the Lord will show who belongs to him." Numbers 16:5. The next day fire consumed the 250, and the earth swallowed Korah's household. Numbers 16:31-33. Yet grumbling persisted, leading to a plague killing 14,700. Aaron's budding rod confirmed his priesthood, quelling dissent. Numbers 17:8-10. Water scarcity struck again at Kadesh. The people quarreled. "Why did you bring the Lord's community into this wilderness, that we and our livestock should die here?" Numbers 20:4. God told Moses, "Speak to that rock before their eyes, and it will pour out its water." Numbers 20:8. But Moses, frustrated, struck the rock twice. "Listen, you rebels, must we bring you water out of this rock?" Numbers 20:10. Water flowed, but God rebuked. "Because you did not trust in me enough to honor me as holy, you will not bring this community into the land I give them." Numbers 20:12. Even Moses faced consequences for faltering faith. Miriam died at Kadesh, and Edom denied passage, forcing a detour. Numbers 20:1, 14-21. Aaron died on Mount Hor, passing the high priesthood to Eleazar. Numbers 20:28. Battles ensued. Victory over Arad's king. Numbers 21:1-3. But then fiery serpents plagued the camp for complaining. So Moses made a bronze snake. Anyone who is bitten can look at it and live, Numbers 21:9, a symbol of faith's healing power, later echoed in John 3 verses 14 to 15. The victories over Sihon and Og bolstered morale, Numbers 21:21-35. Moab's plains, Balak hired Balaam to curse Israel. Balaam, despite his donkey's rebuke, Numbers 22:28-30, could only bless. How beautiful are your tents, Jacob, your dwelling places, Israel. Numbers 24:5. Yet Balaam advised seduction, leading to idolatry and plague, killing 24,000. Numbers 25:19. Phinehas' zeal stopped it, earning priestly covenant. Numbers 25:11-13. A census numbered 601,730 men, similar to the first, showing God's preservation. Numbers 26. Inheritance laws evolved when Zelophehad's daughters claimed rights, granted by God. Numbers 27:1-11. Moses commissioned Joshua as successor, laying hands on him. Numbers 27:18-23. These wanderings, though marked by rebellion, were formative. The Torah's laws were lived out, feasts observed, offerings made, justice administered. Deuteronomy recounts Moses' farewell speeches, reiterating the Torah, urging covenant renewal. In Deuteronomy 8 verses 2-3, remember how the Lord your God led you all the way in the wilderness these 40 years to humble and test you. He humbled you, causing you to hunger and then feeding you with manna, to teach you that man does not live on bread alone but on every word that comes from the mouth of the Lord. The wilderness forged identity, from slaves to a Torah-observant nation. Moses' enduring criticism exemplified servant leadership. As they neared Canaan, hope dawned, but Moses knew he would view it from afar. Trials taught that obedience to the Torah was key to blessing, a lesson echoing through Jewish history. As the Israelites camped in Moab's plains, overlooking the Promised Land, Moses, now 120 years old, prepared for his farewell. His eyes undimmed, vigor unabated, Deuteronomy 34 verse 7. He delivered stirring speeches recorded in Deuteronomy, the Torah's fifth book. This second law reiterated Sinai's covenant, adapting it for the new generation born in the wilderness. Moses reviewed their history, exhorted obedience, and prophesied blessings and curses. In Deuteronomy 1 verses 1-3, these are the words Moses spoke to all Israel in the wilderness east of the Jordan. In the 40th year, Moses proclaimed to the Israelites all that the Lord had commanded him concerning them. Moses recounted the Exodus, Sinai, and wanderings, emphasizing God's faithfulness despite Israel's failures. He warned against forgetting. When you eat and are satisfied, when you build fine houses and settle down, then your heart will become proud and you will forget the Lord your God, who brought you out of Egypt. Deuteronomy 8 verses 12-14. The Shema, Judaism's central prayer, was proclaimed. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your strength. Deuteronomy 6 verses 4-5. This command to love God wholly, teaching it to children, binding it as symbols, encapsulated the Torah's essence. Laws were restated: dietary, Deuteronomy 14, tithing, Deuteronomy 14 verses 22-29, debt release every 7 years, Deuteronomy 15 verses 1-11, and festivals, Deuteronomy 16. Justice was paramount. Appoint judges and officials for each of your tribes. Do not pervert justice or show partiality, Deuteronomy 16 verses 18-19. Kingship guidelines foreshadowed monarchy. The king must copy the Torah, reading it daily to remain humble, Deuteronomy 17 verses 18-20. Moses addressed idolatry's allure. When you look up to the sky and see the sun, the moon, and the stars, do not be enticed into bowing down to them, Deuteronomy 4 verse 19. He prophesied exile for disobedience but restoration for repentance. Even if you have been banished to the most distant land under the heavens, from there the Lord your God will gather you and bring you back. Deuteronomy 30 verse 4. The choice was stark. I have set before you life and death, blessings and curses. Now choose life, so that you and your children may live. Deuteronomy 30 verse 19. In a covenant renewal ceremony, Moses commanded, "All of you are standing today in the presence of the Lord your God, to enter into a covenant with the Lord your God." Deuteronomy 29 verses 10 to 12. This included future generations, binding the Torah eternally. Moses' song in Deuteronomy 32 poetically reviewed history, warning of apostasy. They abandoned the God who made them and rejected the rock their Savior. Deuteronomy 32 verse 15. Yet it ended hopefully. "Rejoice, ye nations, with his people, for he will avenge the blood of his servants." Deuteronomy 32 verse 43. He blessed the tribes individually like a patriarch. A Reuben, "Let Reuben live and not die, nor his people be few." Deuteronomy 33 verse 6. A Judah, "Bring him to his people, help him against his foes." Deuteronomy 33 verse 7. A Levi, "They have observed your word and guarded your covenant. Bless all his skills, Lord." Deuteronomy 33 verses 9 to 11. Benjamin, "Let the beloved of the Lord rest secure in him." Deuteronomy 33 verse 12. Joseph, Ephraim, and Manasseh, "May the Lord bless his land with the precious dew from heaven above." Deuteronomy 33 verse 13. Zebulun and Issachar, "They will summon peoples to the mountain and there offer the sacrifices of the righteous." Deuteronomy 33 verse 19. A Gad, "He chose the best land for himself." Deuteronomy 33 verse 21. Dan, "Dan is a lion's cub springing out of Bashan." Deuteronomy 33 verse 22. Naphtali, "Naphtali is abounding with the favor of the Lord." Deuteronomy 33 verse 23. The Asher, "Most blessed of sons, let him be favored by his brothers." Deuteronomy 33 verse 24. These blessings evoke Jacob's, Genesis 49, assigning roles and territories, envisioning a united Israel in Canaan. Moses concluded, "There is no one like the God of Jeshurun, who rides across the heavens to help you." Deuteronomy 33 verse 26. His farewell was poignant, knowing his end neared. God had said, "You will die on the mountain you are about to climb and be gathered to your people." Deuteronomy 32 verse 50. Moses viewed Canaan from Mount Nebo but would not enter, a consequence of Meribah. This period showcased Moses' wisdom as teacher and prophet. Deuteronomy's style, passionate, personal, reflected his deep love for the people and God. He urged internalization of the Torah. "These commandments are to be on your hearts. Impress them on your children. Talk about them when you sit at home and when you walk along the road." Deuteronomy 6 verses 6 to 7. Torah became a living guide, not stone tablets alone. As Moses prepared to die, Joshua stood ready. The transition was seamless, with Moses encouraging, "Be strong and courageous. The Lord himself goes before you and will be with you." Deuteronomy 31 verses 7 to 8. The Song of Moses and Blessings served as a spiritual will, equipping Israel for conquest. Moses' legacy loomed large: deliverer, lawgiver, intercessor. His farewell encapsulated the Torah's themes: covenant, choice, blessing, preparing a nation for its destiny. From sea-splitter to sage, Moses' life bridged slavery to promise, his words enduring as the foundation of faith. Moses ascended Mount Nebo alone as God commanded, to view the promised land he would not enter. From Pisgah's peak, overlooking the Jordan Valley, God showed him the inheritance. "This is the land I promised on oath to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob when I said, 'I will give it to your descendants.' I have let you see it with your eyes, but you will not cross over into it." Deuteronomy 34 verse 4. Panorama stretched from Gilead to Dan, Judah to the Mediterranean, a fertile expanse contrasting the wilderness. Moses, at 120, reflected on his extraordinary life, from Nile basket to palace prince, exile shepherd to sea-parting prophet, lawgiver to weary leader. In Deuteronomy 34 verses 5 to 6, and Moses the servant of the Lord died there in Moab, as the Lord had said. He buried him in Moab in the valley opposite Beth Peor, but to this day no one knows where his grave is. God's personal burial underscored Moses' uniqueness, no shrine to idolize, preventing veneration of his remains. Jewish tradition holds angels contended for his body, Jude 1 verse 9, but his tomb's secrecy emphasized his role as God's servant, not a demigod. The Torah eulogizes, Moses was 120 years old when he died, yet his eyes were not weak nor his strength gone, Deuteronomy 34 verse 7. People mourned 30 days, honoring their liberator, Deuteronomy 34 verse 8. Joshua, filled with wisdom from Moses' imposition of hands, assumed leadership, Deuteronomy 34 verse 9. Yet the closing words affirm Moses' singularity. Since then, no prophet has risen in Israel like Moses, whom the Lord knew face to face, who did all those signs and wonders the Lord sent him to do in Egypt. For no one has ever shown the mighty power or performed the awesome deeds that Moses did in the sight of all Israel. Deuteronomy 34 verses 10 to 12. Moses' death marked the Torah's end, but his legacy began. As author, traditionally credited with Genesis through Deuteronomy, he provided Israel's origin story, creation, patriarchs, Exodus, covenant. Torah shaped Jewish identity, law, and ethics, influencing Christianity and Islam. His intercessions saved Israel multiple times, modeling prophetic advocacy. Humility defined him. Now Moses was a very humble man, more humble than anyone else on the face of the earth, Numbers 12:3. In Jewish tradition, Moses is Moshe Rabbeinu, our teacher, central to Passover Seders recounting Exodus. The splitting of the sea symbolizes liberation, celebrated in song and ritual. Kabbalah views him as a soul archetype embodying wisdom. Christianity sees typologies, Moses as Christ's foreshadow, lifting the serpent paralleling the cross, manna as Eucharist. Moses' story inspires globally, a reluctant hero overcoming speech impediments, confronting tyranny, leading to freedom. His ethical monotheism challenged polytheism, promoting justice and compassion. Torah's universal principles against murder, theft, false witness undergird legal systems. Challenges in legacy include conquest commands debated ethically today. Yet contextually they addressed ancient idolatry. Moses' pleas for mercy highlight grace. Post-Torah, Joshua conquered Canaan, but Moses' influence persisted. Prophets like Elijah echoed his miracles. The Transfiguration, Matthew 17, featured Moses with Jesus. In art, Michelangelo's horned Moses statue, from mistranslated radiant, captures his majesty. Moses' life teaches perseverance, from failure, killing the Egyptian, to triumph, Sinai. His marriage to Zipporah showed cross-cultural bonds. Fatherhood to Gershom and Eleazar grounded him. Ultimately, Moses embodies faith's journey, from doubt at the bush to unwavering obedience. His undiscovered grave symbolizes eternal mystery, his words living on. As the man who split the ocean, he parted history, ushering covenant light. His story reminds, God uses imperfect vessels for divine purposes, guiding through wilderness to promise. Moses' miracles, from plagues to sea parting, stand as divine signatures, proving Yahweh's supremacy. The burning bush, unconsumed, symbolized God's eternal presence, fire of holiness without destruction. Signs to Pharaoh, staff to snake, leprous hand healed, demonstrated authority over nature and body. Plagues systematically dismantled Egypt's gods. Nile to blood humbled Hapi, darkness eclipsed Ra. escalated, offering repentance, showcasing mercy and judgment. The Red Sea parting remains iconic, a hydrological marvel defying physics, walls of water as deliverance corridors. Manna and quail fed millions, teaching daily dependence. Water from rock quenched thirst, prefiguring spiritual sustenance. Sinai, thunderous revelation made the mountains smoke, engraving commandments on stone, a tangible divine encounter. These wonders weren't mere spectacles but covenant confirmations, building faith. Deuteronomy 29 verses 2 to 3. Your eyes have seen all that the Lord did in Egypt to Pharaoh. Yet the Lord has not given you a mind that understands or eyes that see or ears that hear. Miracles demanded response, yet often met unbelief, as with the spies. Torah, Moses' greatest legacy, transcends time. Comprising Pentateuch, Genesis, Creation, Patriarchs, Exodus, Sinai, Leviticus, Holiness Codes, Numbers, Wanderings, Deuteronomy, Farewell, it blends narrative, law, poetry. Themes of creation, fall, redemption weave through, pointing to ultimate restoration. Torah's laws foster shalom, Shabbat rest combats burnout, Jubilee releases debt, preventing inequality. Ethical imperatives like love your neighbor as yourself, Leviticus 19 verse 18, inspire global human rights. Dietary kashrut promotes discipline. Purity rites symbolize separation from sin. In modernity, Torah study is central to Judaism. Yeshivas delve into Talmudic interpretations of Moses' words. Reform, conservative, Orthodox branches vary observance, but all revere the scroll. Christianity views Torah as fulfilled in Christ, law of love building on Mosaic foundation. Islam honors Musa as prophet, Quranic Exodus tales. Moses' story resonates culturally. Films like The Ten Commandments dramatize his life. Metaphors like parting the sea denote overcoming impossible odds. In civil rights, Martin Luther King invoked Moses. I've been to the mountaintop. I've seen the promised land. Challenges persist. Historical debates on Exodus evidence, with some viewing it mythically. Yet archaeological finds like Merneptah stele mention Israel circa 1200 BCE. Spiritually, Moses models prayer. His face-to-face intimacy invites relational faith. Reflections on Moses reveal a multifaceted figure. Adopted prince, murderer redeemed, hesitant speaker turned orator, intercessor sparing nations. His anger at Meribah cost entry to Canaan, humanizing him, greatness with flaws. The Torah's timelessness lies in adaptability, principles over rigid rules. Environmental stewardship from till and keep the garden, Genesis 2 verse 15. Social justice from do not mistreat or oppress a foreigner, Exodus 22 verse 21. Moses' final view from Nebo symbolizes hope deferred but realized through others. Joshua crossed Jordan, conquering under Torah guidance. Millennia later, his story inspires. From oppression to freedom, doubt to faith, lawlessness to covenant. Dear viewers, we've journeyed through Moses' epic, from Nile infant to Nebo's peak. His splitting the ocean wasn't just miracle but metaphor for breaking bondage. Torah he brought guides still, offering wisdom in chaos. If inspired, share this tale, subscribe for more biblical explorations. May Moses' faith strengthen yours, leading through personal wildernesses to promised peace. Till next time, Shalom.